Welcome back to Horn Takes, your Texas football and baseball talk destination. I am Sean Redfern. It is Monday. We survived the weekend, a bye weekend at that. They're always rough, but we had a pretty good time. Got to relax a little. Didn't have to be worried about those Texas Longhorns, how they were going to do. Got to watch other people suffer. It's always good. It's Florida week, baby. And man, I got to tell you guys, from the second they announced the SEC, like Texas going to the SEC, I think this is one of the ones that I was just most excited about. Seeing Texas play Florida for some reason. Probably had something to do with the fact that I followed Florida a lot in high school. They were pretty good back in my high school days. And so I tried to watch them a lot, and I always liked their colors. Man, I just always have kind of, I don't know, man, Steve Spurrier, those high flying Gator offenses, they were just fun to watch. So I think for me, and don't get me wrong, I'm excited about a lot of SEC matchups, but I think this one especially exciting to me. So we are fired up, man. We're going to be in Austin on Saturday, checking out the game. I hope the Longhorns show up because if they don't, this Florida team, man, I don't. Their record doesn't say it, but I've been watching some film. I watched them play. I say I watch film. I hate when people say that. I apologize. I've been checking tapes. I'm going to call it checking tapes because I don't have the film. I got the replay, but I did get the Skycast replay, which is outstanding. You get a really nice view of all the running plays, all the formations, the motions. So we've been watching Florida against Georgia. We've done mostly offense. We'll dig into the defense for our show on Thursday. By the way, I've decided I'm doing some check taping going forward. We're gonna we're gonna show you guys film and break down those things. We're gonna talk about what the opposing teams are doing. We're gonna do it sometime early next week after our game with Florida to see what we were doing. It's time. So we're going to do that. So because of that, we will not have 5 shows a week. We will more than likely have 4 shows a week. And y'all are just going to have to deal with it. I'm sure y'all will be okay. We'll do a Trace Otra games recap on week 10 today. And then we'll do the deep dive on those Florida Gators. That's a statistical analysis of the opponent. You can check us out on Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube at Horn Takes. Listen to the podcast at Apple Podcast, iHeart Podcast, Spotify Podcasts. If you have none of those things, you can go to horntakespodcast.buzzsprout.com. Find all the episodes there since day one. Trace Otra Games recap. Let's do it. 23-4 headed into week 10 on Trace Otra Games. We have had one weekend where we lost 2 of 3, and then 2 weekends where we lost 1 of 3. Now, we have been perfect other than that headed into this week 10. We had number 4 Ohio State at number 3 Penn State. Kind of a must win for both these teams. If you're Penn State, like you got to win one of these, right? I don't. I'm sure there has been one. There's probably been a lot. I cannot recall a team that has more hype than Penn State that just never wins literally anything. They just cannot win a big game. They can't. Franklin cannot do it. So this was an opportunity against an Ohio State team, highly ranked, but probably not as good as some of the Ohio State teams over the last few years. It's a good opportunity for them to build their resume, get that big win. We didn't think they would do it. We thought Will Howard is better than Drew Alar. Sorry, Penn State. We just thought Ohio State was going to go into Happy Valley and just take this win. We had them winning 30-17. It ends up being 20-13. Pretty close game. Couple of missed opportunities for both teams. For Ohio State to sort of leg it out and blow it a little wide open. For Penn State to get back into it, they just couldn't do it. So once again, James Franklin and the Penn State Nittany Lions fail in a big game. A tough situation, man. They go beat the brakes off anybody else, but they just cannot beat anybody that's good. Can't do it. 1-0 headed into the second game. We had number 10 Aggie at South Carolina. Aggie was a 3-point favorite headed into this one, sitting on top of the SEC standings. Man, A&M wins this one. Woo! The momentum. You just got to feel like the momentum would have just been with them headed into the final few games of the season. Now, if they lose this game, they're sitting in a logjam with a bunch of one-loss teams in the SEC, and who knows what happens then. South Carolina, man, we talked about how they were 2 of 3 against their best opponents so far this season. 1 of 3, rather. 1-2. Shit. They're 2-3 in the SEC. 2 of those losses came to LSU and Bama by 5 points combined. We thought South Carolina would be better defensively, and they absolutely were. We had some keys, some questions to this game. Can South Carolina slow down Reed and Moss? Yes. Who wins the turnover battle? I have no idea. Which QB is able to hit a big play over the top? I cannot remember. Can Aggie handle the pressure of being a top 10 team that controls its own destiny on the road? Absolutely not. They could not. We said this one would be tough. We had South Carolina 27-23. Man, 44-20. South Carolina just emasculates Texas A&M. Kind of slams the door shut on this magical season the Aggies had going on. And it's not over. They can still get in, but it's a lot tougher road to hoe for the Aggies right now. They got to go to Auburn. Texas comes to town on Thanksgiving weekend. 2-0 headed into game 3 rather. Number 18 Pitt at number 20 SMU. SMU a 7.5-point favorite at home. We didn't have much to say about this one except I like SMU. I like their speed. I like their defense. I didn't think Pitt was for shit. I didn't think Syracuse was that good when they beat the piss out of Syracuse. Pitt has played nobody. They finally did. We had SMU winning this one 38-24. SMU beats the brakes off of Pitt over in Dallas 48-25. So that's 3-0, folks. That puts us 26-4 on the season. That's pretty damn solid, man. We'll take that. We will do Trace Otra games probably on Thursday this week, along with a defensive tape checking of those Florida Gators. Let's get into the deep dive on them Florida Gators. That's where we do just statistical analysis. We just look at all the stats, how they line up against this Texas team. Texas was anywhere from a 22.5 to a 24-point favorite opening up on this deal for Saturday. So not a lot of people expecting a lot of other people to give Gators much of a chance in this game. And a really rough year for Billy Napier just got rougher. DJ Lagway left the game against Georgia with, it looked like a hamstring injury. Kind of slipped on the turf a little bit, grabbed his hamstring. Billy Napier says it's significant, could be significant. I guess they're doing an MRI today. Hopefully, hope the best for the guy. But, man, hamstrings just don't heal that easy. That's got to be a rough. I've never had one, but I imagine that's a for a skill guy. That's got to be a painful, tough deal. Because like everything works, unless it's really bad when like tears away from the bone or something like that. Florida is now down to their third string quarterback. Graham Mertz tore his ACL, I believe, in the first half of the game against Tennessee with a lead. And then DJ Lagway goes down in the first half of the game against Georgia with a lead. So they have just had awful, awful quarterback injury luck this season at Florida. I mean, say what you want about Florida not being good. Billy Napier needs to go. I don't know a lot of coaches that are doing much when they can't keep a quarterback healthy. So enter Aiden Warner to lead Florida this week, presumably in Austin. I mean, DJ Lagway got carted off the field. I'm pretty sure he's not playing Saturday in Austin. Just a cursory look at Aiden Warner. 9 of 25 for 96 yards. No touchdowns, 1 interception on the season. 36% passing. And now he's got 3 interceptions on the season. They must not have updated their stats when I looked at these. Or perhaps I looked wrong. That's possible. Not a very big guy. Certainly not as big as Lagway. Noticeable difference when Warner came in the game versus what Lagway looked like. But I think he's not like I'd say he is certainly not DJ Lagway. He's certainly not Arch Manning from a athleticism perspective, but I don't think he's quite like Quinn Ewers. I say all that to say I don't think the offense changes much at all for Florida. I mean, I think they can come out there and do pretty much what they were going to do with DJ Lagway. Maybe you don't call as many designed runs, but I think he can move a little bit. Montrell Johnson Jr. leads the Gators on the ground with 373 yards on 70 carries. He's got 4 touchdowns, but he didn't play a snap against Georgia. So I don't know if he's hurt. I don't know if he's in trouble. I don't know what the deal is with Montrell Johnson, but he still leads the team in rushing. Well, maybe he doesn't now. Again, they may not have updated their stats. The stats I found on the Florida website, these were the stats. Jaden Ball has 323 yards on 70 carries, 5 touchdowns. He was 17 carries for 64 yards against Georgia. And then Jacoby Jackson, 12 carries for 74 yards and a touchdown against Georgia. Man, they had some pretty decent success on the ground against Georgia. We'll talk about it more tomorrow when we check tapes on that Florida offense. You could tell they came in with a mindset, we're going to try to run the football. And that was a huge part of their game plan early on. And man, they did it pretty well. Kind of got to wonder if maybe they didn't get away from it starting the second half. Elijah Badger leads the Florida receiving corps with 560 yards, 2 touchdowns. Chamir Dyke has 428 yards and 2 touchdowns. Tight end Arliss Boardingham has 115 yards, 2 touchdowns. And then something I noticed against Georgia when I was checking tapes. Tony Livingston, Hayden Hanson, those are 2 big tight ends they bring in a lot when they want to run the football, and they do these 2 tight end jumbo type sets. So Boardingham comes off the field. These 2 guys come on the field. It's a lot of running. Boardingham appears to me to be a guy that can flex off the line, flex off the end of the line. He's not like your traditional type of tight end. You flip on over to the defensive side of the ball, which I haven't had a chance to look at too in depth yet, and we will for the Thursday show when we check tapes. I got to say check tapes a lot because I don't want to say watch film. DB Trickweeze Bridges, I believe I pronounced that right. Leads Florida in tackles with 42. He's got 2 forced fumbles and an interception. Edges Tyreek Sapp and George Gums Jr. They lead the Gators with tackles for loss of 5 apiece. And then Sapp leads the Gators in sacks with 3.5. So interesting. Florida, not a bad team sacking the quarterback. I think they have 19 headed into the Georgia game. But they spread it out a lot. 3.5 sacks, not a lot of sacks. So that kind of tells me a couple of things. They play a lot of guys, which means they think they're confident in a lot of guys. And I think they bring pressure from a lot of different places. We saw it a little bit perusing through some film, some tapes. We were checking tapes. Damn it. This is going to be hard. I may just have to succumb and say watching film and just hate myself. I don't know. Devin Moore leads Florida in interceptions with 2. So let's dive right in. Texas coming in ranked 5th in the country this week. Florida not rated. Texas with a 7-1 overall record, 3-1 in the SEC. Florida sitting at 4-4 on the season, 2 of 3 in the SEC. So you look at it just starting out on paper, man, it's already looking bad for Florida. And honestly, it doesn't get a whole lot better as you really start to look at these stats. Texas ranked number 16 in total offense with 453 yards a game. Florida's total defense, 81st in the country. They give up 381 yards a game. Texas, number 13 in passing offense in the country, 294 yards per game. Florida's passing defense ranks 68th in the country at 219 yards per game. Texas rushing offense. Here's an interesting spot, I think. I think this is a place where Texas could take advantage. And I know Steve Sarkisian doesn't really like to take advantage on the ground, but I think he might have an opportunity to do that in this game. Texas only averaging 158 yards a game on the ground. That's 65th in the country, but Florida's rushing defense is ranked 88th. They give up 162 yards a game on the ground. So that could be an area if Steve Sarkisian wanted to. He could maybe lean on it a little bit, see if they could get that running game back on track. Scoring offense, Texas ranks 16th. They're scoring almost 38 points a game. Florida ranks 72nd in scoring defense, giving up almost 25 points a game. So as you can see, the theme, folks, it's not looking real good on paper. And we know games are not played on paper. Here's another spot I think is interesting. Could play a factor in this game. Texas ranked 82nd in the country on sacks allowed. They've given up 17 sacks, and a lot of it, ton of it, has been in the SEC. Georgia pretty good rushing the passer, 37th ranked in sacks in the country. 19 a game, or excuse me, 19, not 19 a game. So I think there's an area where Florida has an opportunity to take advantage and slow this Texas offense down, which to me makes Sark maybe taking advantage of that running game, that open window there, all the more important. Turnovers lost. This is a huge area of concern for Texas. They're ranked 94th in the country. They've lost 14 turnovers, and again, the majority of them have been in SEC play. The good news for Texas, Florida, not that great taking the ball away. They're ranked 54th. They got 12 takeaways this year. But Georgia wasn't good taking the ball away. And Georgia took the ball away from Texas 4 freaking times. Third down offense, Texas is ranked 20th in the country. They're converting at almost 47% on third down. Florida not good on third down defense. They're ranked 76th. They're allowing almost 40% conversions. Advantage Texas. Red zone offense, Texas is 34 for 39 in the red zone with 29 touchdowns. They rank 53rd in the country in the red zone. Not that great. Florida's defense, 23 of 27. They're allowing scores. 16 of those 23 scores touchdowns. That's good for 72nd. So neither one of these teams like upper echelon at either one of these spots. But again, if you look at it, it kind of favors Texas. So you take that Texas offense, you slap it up against that Florida defense. On paper, looks pretty bad for Florida. It doesn't get any better when you turn it around and look at Texas's defense against Florida's offense. Texas is ranked number 1 in total defense, 241 yards per game. Florida's total offensive rank is 69th, 390 yards per game. And you got to think with a third string guy making his first start on the road. And if the Texas fans show up like they can, it is going to be a pretty rough environment. I think one saving grace is it's an 11 a.m. kick. Florida not that good. Maybe we just get sort of an average Darrell K. Royal environment, which would favor Florida. But if the Texas fans show up, and it's crazy like Georgia, it's crazy like Alabama was 2 years ago, that could be rough on the young man making his first start. I assume it's his first start. I didn't even bother to go look up what his classification was or where he's been, anything like that. So maybe that's my bad. Either way, not ideal sitch. Passing defense, Texas is ranked first in the country. They only give up 135 yards per game. Florida's passing offense is ranked 56th in the country. They give up 244. Excuse me, their offense, they pass for 244 yards per game. Rushing defense, Texas is 16th in the country, giving up just over 100 yards a game, 105 yards per game, and I think that's pretty surprising. I I know last year was like 80 or 85 or something like that, so this is not an improvement. It's a regression. However, I think if you can hold teams to right around 100 yards a game on the ground, that's pretty damn salty, especially when you consider the mobile quarterbacks these days, and it's just different. Nonetheless, Florida's rushing offense, terrible, 83rd in the country. They only rush for 145 yards a game. Although, again, they did have some pretty decent success against Georgia. Scoring defense, Texas is ranked second in the country, trailing only Army, and it's by like 0.5 points. It's about like half a point a game, I think. Texas giving up 11.5 points a game. Florida's scoring offense is ranked 57th. They score just south of 30 points a game. Here's another one of those sort of key places, and we've heard it on the other side. Flip it around. Texas ranked 28th in sacks. They got 20. Florida sitting at 46, only 12 sacks allowed on the season. So, I mean, they're giving up less than 2 sacks a game. Can this Texas defense is this an area where they could take advantage? Is this an area where they could have a sort of a breakout game? Or does the Florida offensive line keep Warner upright, give him some time? I think that's a key. Certainly one to think about. Texas ranks 14th in turnovers gained, 17. Turnovers lost, 67th for Florida. They've lost the ball 12 times. Texas is 7th in third down defense. 28% of the time they allow a conversion. That's pretty damn good. Flipping around Georgia, or man, I keep wanting to call Florida Georgia. Florida's offense, 103rd in the country. They only convert at about a 36% clip on third downs. Red zone defense, Texas 11 for 15, giving up scores. 19th in the country. 7 of those 11 scores have been touchdowns, though. And you look at that Florida offense, they're 67th in the red zone. They've scored 29 out of 34 times, but 23 of those 29 touchdowns. So I think, we talk about Coach K defensively kind of having this philosophy of we will let you go up and down the field all you want. Once we get inside that red zone, we're going to squeeze you a little bit. And we don't want to give up scores. Well, that hasn't happened for Texas the last couple games. They have not turned those red zone trips by the defense into field goals. There's been a lot of touchdowns scored against Texas in the red zone. I think like 6 or 7. 6. I think headed into the Georgia game, they had only given up 1 red zone touchdown. And I'm pretty sure, I don't know, we'll have to go back and look. Anyway, a lot of it has been the last 2 games for sure. So just looking at the statistics on these two teams, man, it's pretty lopsided in Texas's favor. But I think there are a few spots where Florida can take an advantage and maybe have some success and maybe keep this game close. If you're a Florida Gator, really you're any team on the road, all you want to do is keep a game close going into the fourth quarter, and then anything can happen. You look at this Florida offense, lots of pre-snap shifts, motion. It reminds me a lot of Brian Harson's offenses at Texas. And I'm sure he did the same thing at Boise State. Probably did the same thing at Auburn. They go out of their way to get you to line up wrong so they can out leverage you in the run game. Want to get you confused in the secondary so you miss assignments, you don't communicate. I mean, it's crazy. I'm going to put together like a little montage, if you will, of a lot, and it won't be all of it, but just the pre-snap movement that Florida gave Georgia. I thought Georgia had a really good answer to it. To me, and I wouldn't swear it, because I'm not that smart, but to me it looked like Georgia just kind of let them run wherever the hell they wanted to pre-snap, and they just kind of adjusted to it once they got where they were going. So, like, you didn't see situations where Georgia was running with men across formations a whole lot. But then they would wind up in man coverage. Maybe I'm crazy. I don't know. I'll have to go back and look at that because I don't remember watching this Florida offense when I was checking tapes on them, seeing a whole lot of Georgia movement in the back end to keep up with what Florida was doing. What you get after the snap, pretty damn basic. At least it was in this Georgia game. They got your handful of run plays that they run out of different looks. I saw the same route combination at least 3 or 4 times in this game. A little drag across the middle with a little dig up behind it. On the other side of the field, the guy's going deep, pressing the safeties off. They do that a lot. I think Florida comes into this game and says, we have got to try to build off the success we had against Georgia on the ground, and they've got to keep the ball out of Warner's hand. I mean, if they have to depend on Warner to win this game, it's probably going to be really ugly for Florida. Florida had this is running backs. 29 rushes for 138 yards, 4.7 yards per carry, and 1 touchdown by Jackson. They were pretty successful against that Georgia front. I mean, I'm not quite sure why they did so much passing in the second half, honestly. Once they got that game to 20-20, man, I if it's me, man, I might get stuffed 3 times in a row, but I think I'm running the ball a lot. And I think that's what you're going to see against Texas. Texas is a little leaky. We've been talking about it all season. They'll stop you. Every once in a while, though, you give up a 12-yarder, a 25-yarder. Sometimes longer. These Florida backs probably pretty speedy. Thought the offensive line for Florida looked really good against the Georgia front. They get a hat on a hat, and they do it well. Now, they don't get up to the second level that great. Part of that's just who you're playing. Linebackers for Georgia made a lot of plays in this game. Hard to judge a guy after just a few, not even a start. But to me, Warner, man, when he gets pressured, he doesn't look all that accurate down the field, and he escapes the pocket to the right, his right, exclusively. I mean, he almost turns completely sideways towards the sideline on his right and runs every single time he gets pressure. I think that's something that Coach PK should notice, will notice, possibly take advantage of. I thought he had a lot of chances downfield. I mean, they had guys open, and the protection wasn't perfect, but it was pretty good. It was much better than the protection Texas gave Quinn Ewers when they played Georgia. Defensively, this is a base nickel team, just like pretty much almost anybody else in college football these days. We will look at it. Obviously, we're going to check the tape, man. We'll have a lot more to talk about as far as details on this, but they definitely are not afraid to leave those DBs on an island. They are definitely not afraid to bring 6 guys. Linebackers seem really overly aggressive in the run game, which means you can get the ball behind them and play action. I expect to see a lot of RPO, which I'm not a giant fan of because we can't really run the zone that well. This defense held Georgia to 146 yards on the ground, and I know Georgia hasn't been just a bang-up running team this year, but Florida was averaging 162 yards per game given up on the ground. They held Georgia to less than that. So, man, I look at this Florida team, and I feel like they're a pretty scrappy team. I don't think you want to mess around with this team. I don't think 4-4 for this Florida team is exactly who they are. They were in a 20-20 game with 7.5 to go in the fourth quarter with Georgia. And they did it kind of the old-fashioned way. They ran the ball. So I think Florida's going to show up Saturday, and they're going to try to punch Texas in the mouth. And Texas better get ready for it because I'm telling you, man, 2 late turnovers just kind of in almost Hail Mary time for Florida, one of them for sure. Makes that game ugly when it wasn't ugly. We will be back tomorrow, Tuesday. We will have the offensive, and I put film room. I don't know what I'm going to call this. I might just call it check tapes on these Florida Gators. You can find us on Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube at Horn Takes. Give us a subscribe. Give us a follow. Won't cost you guys a thing, but we sure appreciate the support. You can email me at horntakes.podcast@gmail.com with all your questions, comments, concerns, and criticisms. I love them all. You guys have a good Monday. It's a short week for us, man. We're going to Austin on Friday, baby. I'm excited. Cannot wait. Hope to see you guys there. You guys get hooked.